Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
How much time have I spent over the last year, 2 years, speaking about the news? The news channels like Sky and the BBC, what they are, how they operate. I think I've outlined in detail. I've made it a mission of mine because I've worked, of course, in mainstream media at every level. I think I've outlined in detail how the news channels replaced daytime soap operas in homes around the world. We know news is scripted drama. If you go to our YouTube channel, I've done a lot of work on how news has taken over our homes, how it is a never-ending serial drama, keeping us uninformed, but also through repetition, programming you and me to make us believe that we have a central part to play in global events, daily global events. That's my opinion. And I've done a lot of work on this. Now today, Sky News is advertising as part of its news bulletins, and I kid you not, Sky News is advertising for smartphones. They are running infomercials for smartphones during the news coverage. And this is relevant to what I'm going to be speaking with Bjorn Eriksson about in a short while. Over to Kay Burley.
Apple is launching its new iPhone models today to mark 10 years since the first model went on sale, and despite a recent drop in sales, the company continues to build on its multi-billion-dollar empire. For the first 3 months of this year, Apple sold 41 million iPhones. iPads were also up 15% in sales, despite declining for a little while. I was one of those. And 4 million Apple Macs were bought by customers. So in the last 3 months, Apple has made more than $43.5 billion. That's quite a lot of money, isn't it? So what can we expect from the new iPhone models? Let's go live to Stoke Newington and speak to freelance tech reporter Tom Wiggins. Hello to you, Tom. Thanks for joining us. What can we expect? And there's more than one phone being launched, isn't there?
So, yeah, I think the iPhone 8 is probably not going to be the big news tonight. We expect to see another one that kind of comes in at a level above that, called the iPhone X.
Wow. And millions of smartphone zombies are queuing around the world for days outside Apple stores to get an iPhone. They are zombies. So you just heard an infomercial for iPhone on Sky News after Burley got through giving you the very healthy financials of Apple and telling you she bought an iPad. She did say that, by the way. Listen back to it. That is an Ofcom violation if ever there was one. After doing all of that, she then hands over to a tech guy who tells you, and he did tell you, I'm not going to play it. He told us even how amazing it is and why we should have one. That's news in a nutshell. Now you'll hear me talking to Bjorn Eriksson soon about the cashless society agenda, and smartphones are central to that. So your news channels are pushing phones instead of doing the news. And when Sky News isn't pushing the iPhone, in the same programme, this, by the way, I'm not making this up, it's pushing flu vaccines. Marvellous. Have a listen to this. Again, it's the amazing Kay Burley.
NHS is warning of a big increase in pressure from the flu virus this winter. Comes after hospitals in Australia and New Zealand struggle to cope with a particularly heavy flu season. Outbreaks often come ahead of major flu epidemics here in Europe. With me is GP Dr. Daisy Bennett. Hello, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
How worried are we?
Oh, Dr. Daisy Bennett is very, very worried. We need to vaccinate everybody in the NHS and pretty much everyone else too, says the doctor.
We need to have plans in place because we don't want a crisis, we don't want a disaster. We need to make sure that we're prepared. So on top of the practical steps that you can make, which is having beds available and having staff on duty to make sure that they're covering all the shifts, we also need to make sure that the NHS staff themselves are healthy, so therefore they need their flu jabs as well. So the staff need to be healthy and not off sick with flu, so it's very important that NHS staff is vaccinated as well with the flu vaccination, as well as of course the patients.
Who should have the jabs?
So all the vulnerable patients, so patients who are over 75, patients with chronic diseases, so long-term lung conditions, heart conditions, diabetes, asthma, respiratory problems like chronic pulmonary disease, all of these conditions make these patients more vulnerable to complications of flu. And the complications of flu are, as you can imagine, the obvious one is pneumonia, and that can be quite debilitating and obviously, and as well, cause death as well.
Yeah, now Dr. Daisy Bennett said that old people with pulmonary obstructive disorder, people with asthma, but old people should have the jab. That's what she said, right? Remember, Burley said, who should have the jab? She said some very old people. She said people with what you would call chronic bronchial type conditions should have the jab. Remember this. This is vital now that you keep that in mind, right? Get the vaccine. Now, the pneumonia claim she made is proper scaremongering, this idea that flu lends to or can develop into pneumonia. That's incredibly, incredibly rare. This is an annual push by the UK media, right? You know, when you've done programmes like mine for many years, and this programme will be 3 years old on Friday, but I've been doing programmes like it for a long time, the same stories prop up or even pop up every year at the same time. It's an annual push, this. They scaremonger the hell out of people in the autumn to make sure the uptake of the vaccine, the flu vaccine, meets their targets. And would you believe me if I told you the targets are not set by doctors but are set by the manufacturers? They are. They own effectively the World Health Organization because of something called a revolving door system. Senior officials at the WHO, and I've done this, I've named these people before, have worked for Merck, Glaxo and all the rest of them. The World Health Organization sets the targets. Do you get me? Right? So Dr. Daisy Bennett, everybody in the NHS needs the vaccine. Old people, people that are prone to chesty, bronchial breathing type things, Dr. Daisy Bennett. Now, pay attention. And know that I would never, ever, ever tell you a lie. What was extraordinary about this today is that obviously somebody at Sky News Central thought that young Dr. Daisy Bennett didn't do very well. And I shit you not, less than 45 minutes later, Burley reread the story, understandably, because they do the same stories every hour, right? Did they use the recording of Dr. Daisy Bennett? Fuck no, they didn't, because Daisy Bennett forgot her lines. This time Burley reread the story, and this time she interviewed Dr. David Lloyd. And David Lloyd had learned his lines better than the previous doctor.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. How concerned are you about what's happening in Australia and subsequently what might happen here?
Oh, I think we should all get quite concerned. This is the time when we should be really working very hard to make sure that our population is protected against flu, because the health service is hardly in the best condition, so we want to have as few people admitted to hospital as we can. So over the next month or two is when everybody who is at risk of catching flu really ought to get to their GP or their pharmacist and get vaccinated straight away.
So why did David Lloyd come on the programme, really? Well, it's for the next question. Go on, Kay, ask the question again. Who should get it?
Who's that? Who's most at risk?
So anybody over the age of 65, anybody with a chronic illness, particularly liver disease, lung disease, heart disease, every child between the ages of 2 and 3, all the children in their first years.
Get in there!
I'm just going to have to look up all the lists now.
Look up the list, David.
School children, classes 1, 2, 3 and 4. Anybody that's living in a residential or a nursing home. Anybody, importantly, who is well but is a carer for someone who isn't very well. And all frontline health and social care workers should be vaccinated against the flu. That's very, very important. So we should all have 100% pick up. So we've extended the range of children that we'd like to vaccinate this year.
Oh, be Jesus, we've extended the range of children we'd like to vaccinate this year. We want to vaccinate grades 1, 2, 3, 4, old people, young people, people who work with elderly people. We want to vaccinate lollipop ladies. Fucking everybody needs to be vaccinated, says Dr. David Lloyd. Dr. David Lloyd. Dr. Daisy Bennett said, old people, anybody that's got asthma, bronchial stuff, that's about right. Said Dr. Daisy Bennett. Listen to what Dr. David Lloyd says next about why it's so important to vaccinate more and more children. You're not going to believe it.
This year, because there was some very good research a couple of weeks ago which showed that if you vaccinate young children, it actually protects not only the children, but it protects the vulnerable elderly as well from getting the flu. So we want to vaccinate an awful lot more people this year so that we can stop them getting the flu.
Jump in anytime you want, Kay. Kay, anytime you want, jump in. He just said research shows, wait for it, that when children get vaccinated, old people don't get the flu. Now, I listened back to this 17 times today, then another 23 times, then I had a break, and I went for a wee, I came back, had a cup of tea, then I listened to it another 50 times. He just said research shows that when children get vaccinated, old people don't get the flu. Kay Burley should have jumped down his throat.
If you vaccinate young children, it actually protects not only the children, but it protects the vulnerable elderly as well from getting the flu. So we want to vaccinate an awful lot more people this year.
Yeah, I'm going to play it again, and I might keep playing it until 9 o'clock. This is incredible, this.
If you vaccinate young children, it actually protects not only the children, but it protects the vulnerable elderly as well from getting the flu. So we want to vaccinate an awful lot more people this year.
So Kay Burley jumped in, right? She said, well, I didn't come across that particular study. That sounds bizarre to me, David Lloyd. Would you like to explain that? She didn't. You know, you're shouting at the telly, go on, Kay, go on, Kay. Ask him to explain that madness. Go on, Kay. What does Kay say? Kay says this.
Sounds as though almost everybody will need one of these injections. If you can't get to the GP, you mentioned pharmacy there. The pharmacist can do it as well?
Everybody needs it. Everybody wants some. Everybody needs it. Everybody in the world. It's amazing that not a journalistic bone, not only in her body, but in anybody working in mainstream media. Hey, David Lloyd, listen, we're sick of this bullshit, man. You're telling us today that the Aussies are worried about flu and they had a rough winter and we better watch out now. And what about the bird flu, the swine flu, the Asian flu? What about all that bollocks that never materialised, David? All of these scares. And we all rushed like feck to the chemist, to the doctor, to get jabbed with a toxic cloud of shit, which didn't do any good because there was no flu epidemic anyway. Probably done us more harm. Never materialised. Imagine how bad you have to be at your job. And I've never set myself on any pedestal as being any sort of special presenter. I'm not. I'm bloody well good at what I do. I'm not the best. I'm not special. Imagine a guy says, we're encouraging more children to get vaccinated because, well, recent research shows that when more children take it up, believe it or not, it prevents the elderly from getting the flu.
If you vaccinate young children, it actually protects not only the children, but it protects the vulnerable elderly as well from getting the flu. So we want to vaccinate an awful lot more people this year.
Yeah, he should be, I've got to be very careful, libel exists, people can sue people for libel. Not going to say what should happen to him. What happens when people get vaccinated is, whatever they are vaccinated with, they begin to shed. It's more likely that when people are carrying around the antibodies of the flu, it's more likely that people will begin to get the flu. Go into any GP surgery over the winter and you'll see the girls on reception. They're usually girls, I'm not being sexist, sneezing and coughing. I've seen it in my own surgery. Monumental bollocks that, eh? Recent evidence says children get vaccinated, it actually helps protect the elderly against the flu. No challenge. No challenge from Kay Burley.